Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous security monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. ProXPN is the leading VPN service, offering free accounts, excellent premium features, and an outstanding commitment to privacy and security online. Use the discount code WEEKLY and save 50% off for life. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email contact@netsparker.com. Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns in application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today.
Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This is our security news discussion for this evening. Where do you want to start, Larry?
That's a good question.
Do you want to start with the tried and true, like IoT, embedded device, embedded system?
Let's do it so we can get the hell out of the way.
So there's a new Mirai worm knocks out 900...
With some upgrades, yep.
It says knocks 900,000 Germans offline, which just brings up an interesting visual of, like, Germans being knocked down or something.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Definitely impacting the end user. I was not familiar with TR-069. Were you, Larry?
TR-069?
Anyone? TR-069? Anyone?
Was that one of the bounty hunters in Star Wars?
Yeah, that's what.
No, that's IG. That's IG. IG-88.
It sounds like a sci-fi reference of some kind. It is actually the protocol that's used by ISPs, which is port 7547. That allows them to manage the routers.
I've never heard of this before.
So we covered this in Hack Naked News. Apparently, there's an authentication type bypass or without authentication, you can download some of the configuration.
Okay.
So hold on, get this. So some of the configuration you can download is the Wi-Fi password.
Oh, good
and you're like,
God.
Well, like, how bad could getting the Wi-Fi password be? Like, you're getting it across the internet. You're not in physical proximity. Except the Wi-Fi password is the same password that's used for the administrative interface on port 80. So the first command you send is to open up the web administration. The second command you send is give me the Wi-Fi password, which then you use to log into,
or vice versa. Give me the web password. Open
doesn't
web.
matter,
Yeah,
right?
and
But it worked. But it worked when they set it up.
But it worked when they set it up.
Yep.
So that is really all I have there. That's what I covered on Hack Naked News. I'm curious to see what you folks actually think of it.
This is actually kind of frightening because this very much reminds me of some of the things that I learned out of my story number 6 from the Core Security blog on reverse engineering TDDP or TTDP. I don't remember which it is. I think I may have transcribed that wrong. This is the management protocol on TP-Link routers. Which has, it is the TDDP, the TP-Link Device Debug Protocol, in which there are 2 different versions, version 1 and version 2, and version 1 requires no authentication.
I was going to say, certainly that must be secure if it's a TP-Link debugging protocol.
Right, and one of the
people that don't even offer a secure login to regular admin? I don't think so.
Yeah, version 1 of the protocol did not require any authentication, which allowed you to query the devices. And I'm trying to see if I can find it in the thing here on. Port 1040 UDP, and allowed you to pull the admin credentials from the devices remotely. The login user and the login password.
What's interesting about this story is that people were actually knocked offline.
Yeah.
and that impacts the end user. Would you think people would like notice that and be outraged? Mm-hmm. And I mean, German people are already like at a pretty hefty state of angry. And just the way they carry themselves, right?
Right.
So I gotta imagine that they're really. Did I just? That's not a.
I wouldn't say they're angry. I wouldn't say they're angry.
No, but they're like. Their demeanor and disposition and the language in and of itself, the way us dumb Americans interpret that is anger, right? That's just the way it comes across.
Right. Like
what Germanic languages do sound harsh.
So
as do
so I'm like, if I'm
Norse
German and I'm one of these 900,000 people, like I'm angry.
Germany is a country with a lot of technically savvy people.
Heck yeah.
Yes. And so they're really pissed off if that's the case.
They know, it is an interesting community, having worked for a German company. And, there's certainly people in places that aren't, technically savvy, but by and large, it's a tech-savvy country, and knocking almost 1 million of them offline and causing them any level of inconvenience, I'm sure doesn't go over well.
They start calling tech support and yelling about butterflies.
If the ISP can do a good job of maintaining my router, by all means do that. The track record, since I spoke about that 3 years ago,
right,
and start Shodan for all these vulnerable routers managed by ISPs that all have the same password. I'm not saying the phrase. I'm trying not to say the phrase, but my research 3 years ago shows that ISPs in general, in certain areas, have done a very poor job.
He doesn't want to say, "I told you so."
Right, but we've seen this story play out in Latin America before. We've seen the story play out elsewhere.
Yep.
We've seen, it's. I get it. If you're trying to deploy networking or anything, if you're trying to deploy anything, you want to ship all of them identical, and poof, off they go, right? Mm-hmm. But then if you want to defend that, and you have common credentials and common vulnerabilities,
I think it's really a level of effort. Like there's a level of effort to deploy something and make it work. There's a greatly increased level of effort, depending on the technology, to deploy it securely and have that happen.
Yes.
I mean, I even noticed that with the small applications that I develop and deploy and maintain here in the studio. And I secured one as an example on the show in a previous technical segment, and recently that broke. And I'm like, I'm really going to have to comment that line out that applies some security to make this shit work so that images come up on the screens. Yeah. And I got to get back to that to figure out exactly why. But it's not even a case of me not understanding why. I understand why. But in order to fix that, I really got in tune with this problem of deployment and the problem that software developers, Jimmy, you do a lot of software development as well, and application security and development. Like, I understand now, like, the struggle. We as security people can point out, yeah, that's secure. But me flipping it around and being in the other seat, in the developer seat, I'm like, yeah, I can. So I take out that security, and now to put it back, it's not easy. Like, now I have to re-architect and test and go. It's a lot more work to redeploy it as securely as I need it to be when there's people beating down my door that it needs. Images have to go up on the screen, right? Like, there's people beating. So I was glad I went through the exercise in a local network here that hopefully no one's going to compromise easily.
And after Jimmy has some comments, if he does, I want to talk about that from the user perspective.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jimmy. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, you nailed it. The struggle is real, and I was doing pen testing for years before moving on to the other side, and now I receive the pen test reports, and it's not easy to fix those things. There's always a compromise.
Yep.
Yeah, and from
more ways than one, usually.
And from the end user experience, I went through this not that long ago. I forget where I was at a SANS conference or something like that, and I'm like, oh crap, iTunes has multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. I need to enable this, and I did. And my iTunes account is in use on all the Apple TVs in our house. And
wife's calling, kids are calling, kids are texting you.
Even worse, after I got home, I could not make that shit work. I literally couldn't make it work.
Right.
But it's secure.
Yeah, it was so secure it was unusable.
Yeah, well, that goes back to Robert Morris, the elders.
Yeah.
Three rules for securing computer
three-legged
systems.
stool. I know.
Secure-
First, don't own a computer. Second, if you do own one, don't plug it in. Third, if you do plug it in, don't turn it on.
Yeah.
Right. Those are secure rules. There's rules for rules
secure,
for
secure, fast, and usable. Pick two.
I'd settle for two
Yeah, like
most
for
days.
me, security in my application affected my logic so much that re-architecting and then writing a whole bunch more code is required. And like Jim
And
said,
who has time for that?
and who has time for, because the struggle is real, right? Like stuff has to work. So I get some insight into that. I know it's
Yeah.
it's not easy. Anyway,
But that's
it's
a
humbling.
really important point, because I hear all the time, you mentioned I've been to conferences this year, and I hear talk after talk after talk after talk where all the pen testers are basically pointing the fingers at the developers saying, well, if you just wrote secure code, this the whole problem.
Ain't nobody got
As if
time for that.
As if that were easy, for
Right.
one thing. As if that's what they were told to do for another.
yeah.
Ain't
Yeah,
nobody
there's no incentive, there's no motivation for the most part to write secure code. They're going to lose their job if they don't make it work an hour ago, and the boss is breathing down their throats.
Not
Well,
just that, the languages and tool sets are getting better at making it harder to write horribly insecure code. I think that's a safe way to put it, right?
Well, I think you
said that right,
But
yep.
yeah, the tools, that's still far from perfect. It's still really easy to write insecure code.
And Jack, you bring up a great point. The architecture and language and infrastructure you choose. So let's say you develop and you try and secure it, and then you realize, wow, that's really not going to work. Like, there's other ways to break this. And like, I came to the conclusion, I'm like, I need to basically change architecture to do this securely. I wrote this script in PHP and Bash, and I'm like, you know what?
God.
That whole thing needs to be scrapped, and I basically need to re-implement the whole thing in Flask and Python. And I've started on that. That's now basically I have to go back to 0 lines of code and recode the entire thing.
But
right?
I would argue that at least you know a good portion of the logic, so it should be a little bit easier to re-implement.
True, but it still takes a lot of time to not just build and develop that, but test it as well.
Yeah.
And then put it in production and still fix what is inevitably going to break in. I mean,
the struggles are real.
Production environments, you have a QA team that helps you with that.
The struggle is real, and it's deeper than that, because in our tech segment, we Jimmy did a great job. It was really cool, and for demonstration purposes, he launched a publicly accessible, very insecure web server. Seen that a lot. Developers, put it out online, making sure it can work. Oh, I'll do the security later. I'll use the secure version later. Right now, I'm working on some portion of the code, and so it's sitting out there publicly accessible, and one thing leads to another, and it's still out there. A week later, a month later, until the pen tester finds it or the bad guy finds it.
Yep.
And just to add to that, I've seen some of these frameworks and infrastructures, and there's a lot of magic behind them, and people just think security is taken care of. I've come across that quite a bit, and it's a false sense of security where it's like, hey, I'm using Rails. There's no cross-site scripting ever, right? And it's not quite that easy. So,
well, and kind of a segue into one of our other stories about the security update for Raspbian. Raspbian.
Whatever.
Thank you.
That's how I say it.
I say the P so that I remember to type it because I spell it wrong.
Yes.
But those that have worked with a Raspberry Pi and use Raspbian
Yep.
know that the default username is Pi.
And password of Raspberry.
Password of Raspberry.
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 Don't forget the P.
I have to say the P because I forget to type it, and then it won't let me log in. But they've changed the default behavior. I don't think enough, but this is the same thing that we're talking about, is that balance between security and usability, in that there are lots and lots of people that are using Raspberry Pis. They want to make it easier for people, but they realized, which is interesting, the Mirai botnet has made them realize that default passwords are bad. Mm-hmm. We kind of all said that about Raspbian a long time ago when security professional gets a Raspberry Pi, installs Raspbian, and goes, that's bad. They've got a default username and password. and we change it, but not everyone's going to do that.
Yep.
And there are comments on this post that they made of people saying, yeah, I put one on the internet and they got compromised, and then I learned that I can't do that anymore. And then there are lots of other comments from people that are saying, yeah, it's great. You've changed your process. So when you download Raspbian now, from this point forward, SSH is disabled by default. You have to go into your
Raspi-config.
Raspi-config thing in /boot on your SD card, right? It's in /boot.
Actually, once it's booted, you can.
Once it's booted, it's in /boot.
Once it's booted, once you've logged in, Raspi-config. Or
as a command,
right? As a command, or you can edit your configuration file in
/boot/ raspi.config.conf.
I don't remember.
I think it's raspi.conf.
But you can do that outside.
I was making HDMI changes to debug one of my problems today, and there was that file is what it was. Anyway, you can change that file so that SSH is enabled
by default.
On by default when you boot it. Well, actually, not by default.
And the sad part is, I should
Still with the default.
I should know that file because we've got a project coming out that heavily uses that file to change something prior to boot.
It's a great file to edit.
Yes, because you're going to put it in anything.
Control everything with that config file. It's great. But the thing is, so they've changed the behavior so that the only change that they've made is that by default SSH is not running. If you do edit the config file or enable SSH, your default username and password is still Pi and Raspberry. So I don't agree with this change, and the comments agree with us that you should allow the user to select a password, and that was vetoed because it would be too easy for people to basically lock themselves out. People suggested, why don't you create a /boot/ raspi-ssh-password file and put the password in there, and that'd be too easy to make a mistake and then not know what your password is.
And then it's like totally non-standard. Yeah.
You can lead a horse to water.
I have
with OpenWRT though, they changed it so that the first time it booted, you log in with the default password.
Telnet.
Then it forced you to change it.
Yep. To log in with Telnet, force you to change it. Shuts off Telnet, enables SSH.
The pain is real. The folks I worked for before joining Tenable, our firewall device, when you logged in, we went to the web interface to start your configuration, gave it some basic information, and you had to put a password. And if it was, that was it. And yes, having worked in support there long ago, people would create a password and lock themselves out. And we would do it to ourselves in support all the time. Spin up a machine to test something and forget what you put the password in so people, other people in our virtual cluster wouldn't and it caused pain. On the other hand, anybody that complained, we would be like, do you, I won't name, everybody knows, right? You Google what the default credentials are for a lot of firewalls and routers, and they're all standards. And it's like, there's the trade-off.
We just solve this problem.
There's the trade-off.
Give me a file in the config before it boots that I can put my SSH public key in. And actually, in Linode, Linode and other cloud providers, you can do that, right?
Put the damn public key in the /boot the configuration file.
But not everyone that's using a Raspberry Pi they're not network engineers, network security engineers that understand the whole private and I was explaining private and public key cryptography to our production engineers who are starting to learn Linux.
Right,
like that's a learning process.
You think about for granted. You think about who this was designed for. It was designed to be no. It was supposed to be a $30 computer that you could attach to your TV where kids could learn how to do programming.
Interesting.
With something
what
like
I'm hearing,
Scratch,
Paul, is that I need to come up and teach your teammates about cryptography.
Yes, please do, because I do a very poor job of teaching. Because they're like SSH, and then I'm like, there's PGP, and there's also public-private key. And it's like the same thing, and then like their heads exploding.
Yep.
My head still explodes when I think about it.
So it's funny this story comes up.
Good.
About all of this stuff that it was interesting that you said they disable SSH by default on Raspbian going forward. I'm like, wait, what? Because I've been using Raspbian for a long time.
You've been using it longer than I have.
And it was always disabled by default. And then apparently some point in there that I didn't even notice it became enabled by default. Because every time I have like a process for when I set it up. In that, build a new, write Raspbian to SD card, plug SD card in, use my TTL to USB converter to connect to the ports, connect to it over serial. Run raspi config, turn SSH on, change the password for the Pi account, create a new account, and enable it for sudo.
Because Pi is sudo to root by default
with no password.
Yes.
So change the password for Pi or disable the account depending on how I feel. Add a new account for myself with all rights for sudo.
So
and
do you
add
disable sudo access for Pi by default, or you just change the password?
I changed the password.
Okay.
And I usually
Pi is essentially your root account.
Right. And quite honestly, I usually don't disable it for sudo, but I probably should because I never use it.
Your account is enabled for sudo, so why does Pi's?
Right. Why does Pi need it? And then I add my public key to the SSH known keys.
Right.
So that I can just SSH to it and not have to worry about it.
And I mean, conceivably, you could add it to the Pi account as well if you needed to get in with that account as a backup or whatever.
Right. Well, yeah.
Well, that would be as secure, but
quite honestly, if I went that far, I'd just pull the card out and write a new image to it.
Yeah.
Because that'd be me.
Right. Well, I mean,
I just deploy a new container.
I like OpenWRT. I thought had a great solution to that, and I thought it was engineered very well. The first time you boot that embedded operating system, you have to telnet to the device, set a password, then it disables telnet and enables SSH.
Yep, I like it.
Which I thought was that was pretty good. I mean, except the initial thing was over telnet, so I don't know if I'd do that today. I'd probably do it over SSH, but I thought that was one solution. It's not the most secure from like our perspective as security engineers, but it solves that default password problem. Anyway, enough about that.
Secure shell use public key cryptography?
It does, right?
It does.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't know.
This was a question for Paul, Larry.
Now you're causing doubt in me, Jack.
You know what we should do is we should get Diffie to come on again, and he can explain it.
He can tell me. There we go. He can tell us.
So Paul, Jeff, let me add some hints to that for Paul. So Paul, when you change your SSH config on a remote system, what are you adding there? Are you adding the private key or the public key?
The public key in authorize _keys.
Right. So what's this private key thing?
Private keys on my system that I need a passphrase to unlock.
Right. So does it use public key cryptography?
I would say yes. Right? No? Is that not public key cryptography?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and yes, it does. Am I right, Jeff?
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer. Yes, it does use public key cryptography.
But is it symmetric or asymmetric? No.
Oh, stop! God, no!
But more importantly, is it symmetric, eh?
I plead the fifth on that one.
Well, is it? Yeah. So is it RSA or Diffie-Hellman? Never mind. So, New Directions in Cryptography in 1976. Diffie and Hellman, never mind.
Someone pick a new story.
They created
ATP,
a new mayonnaise.
Let's talk about something old that's
new again.
No.
It's still
saw
old?
Saw an article about, not me. I saw an article. Beat you to it. Beat you to it.
That's exactly. Jack could see the words coming out of my mouth. It just preempted it.
Got there before you. An article about NTP, which I usually finish first.
Surprised he starts first.
Beat you.
I don't even need a head start anymore.
Wow.
NTP. NTP is another one of those things that a lot of us build the world on and think is important because we'd like our logs and shit to say the same times. And it's one of those grossly underfunded, understaffed. One guy does almost all the work for all of NTP and future things, and he gets funding for about a quarter of his time. And so when there are bugs in NTP, it's...
we'll get to it when we can.
We'll get to it when we can. It's like,
similar to DNS.
Yep. So NTP is another one of those, and since it's been in the, we've had reflective attacks and things in the past. It's been abused. It's like, oh wow, NTP is kind of important. I know that people do other things, but
I just want to say that last December we interviewed Sharon Goldberg about NTP attacks, and what Jack is referencing is a new attack, which essentially, if you read the original vulnerability disclosure on this, there is a one-line bash command that both generates a packet and sends a packet that can crash an NTP server between specific versions.
Right. And if you dig into the history of NTP stuff, it's a BSD. It's a BSD thing that's been ported to Linux, and there were some interesting arguments. I remember when I worked support a decade ago, we had some NTP issues and got it eyeball deep in it and was like, oh, so this is, I get it. Right. Oh, and here we are a decade later, and it's like, oh, it's the same situation.
I have a question for Jeff, since Jeff's all about quizzing me, and I put this hacking trivia app on my Amazon Echo.
Oh, God.
Jeff, man, the question for you, what does BSD stand for?
Berkeley...
I know.
Something.
1 out of 3.
Berkeley System...
No.
Okay, I got the second one wrong. I know the third one, though.
What is it?
Damon.
No.
No?
Nope. Berkeley Sockets.
Nope. Berkeley Software Distribution.
Right. Software distribution.
Berkeley Software Distribution. Alexa tells me I'm correct with that. And my wife just looks at me like, I am married to one of the biggest nerds on the planet.
All right, I got to go add this to my Alexa.
Yeah, it's what it's all
right.
It's like hacking history, trivia.
Berkeley Sockets distribution, right?
Berkeley Sockets distribution. Did I get it wrong?
No, you get it right. It's software. I don't know why I have sockets in my head, but
I
got sockets in my head.
You used to have sock puppets, which is
used to have,
It's most important to know where it came from. Berkeley.
Damned hippies. I mean,
what was its
quickly,
main competitor as a Unix architecture, Paul?
Is this under skills, Paul?
Yes, it is a skill for Alexa.
System 5.
Yes, System 5.
What is it, hacker
all
trivia?
The post-Multics. Hey, let's talk about Saudi Arabia, because...
Okay.
Let's do that.
So, don't believe everything you read. Space Rogue went off today on the Bloomberg report on Saudi Arabia being hacked again, apparently by the same attackers, rumored to be Iran, same tools, supposedly the same code. Elsewhere it says it's new code. I would say pay attention to this, because it's everybody has a drink handy, right? This really looks like cyber war. It's kinetic attacks. It's a kinetic attack because it's doing hardware destruction. It's the wiper.
It's kind of like Iran was like, you hit me with Stuxnet. Hey, that was pretty cool. Let's develop our own and hit Saudi Arabia. That's my take on the story.
Well, that's politics of that region that I'm not getting into. I'm unqualified to, and I'm too sober to. So let's not go there. But it is a new level of attacks. And then some of the articles are linking the timing of this attack to the U.S. election. It may be a coincidence, maybe not. We're not going to know. But pay attention, because this is a new wave of horrifyingly destructive stuff. The last time this happened to Saudi Aramco, for some of you that remember, those that were systems, desktop admins at the time, remember the price of hard drives spiked for a while because Saudi Aramco bought so many
them all.
to replace. What was it, 30,000, 40,000? I forget the details. But anyway, this is ugly.
Confirm nor deny.
This is ugly. Yeah, supposedly there were airplanes flying around to places that built hard drives, picking them up and loading pallets of them in and flying into Riyadh. But so that's ugly. So it's everybody drink cyber war. Theoretically, a new version of the Shamoon wiper, but Space Rogue had previously picked apart the guy that was quoted in the Bloomberg article. One of his other things that he screamed cyber war about, Space Rogue managed to pretty well disassemble. So keep your eyes on this and be skeptical like everything else. Unless we tell you, in which case it's absolutely true.
this is the thing I thought was interesting. This is a variant on malware that stems back from 2012.
Right.
Yeah.
The methods that it uses for spreading in that kind of stuff speak to actually a segment that John Strand and I recorded earlier today that was based on a segment we ran on the show from Jabra from Praetorian.
Right. Yeah.
We talked about basically the top 5 ways in which attackers are able to gain full control of an environment, and that's really authentication,
Zero day is not one of them.
authentication, authorization, and network segmentation
Right.
are the ways that happens, and this malware preys on that, and the fact that oil companies or industrial control systems companies, especially in that region, haven't learned to harden their networks against this type of malware is very disconcerting to me.
I know some folks that worked for Saudi Aramco, and I believe a couple of them still do. They learned a lot from things in 2012, but for a national infrastructure utility of that size, the fact that they haven't fixed everything in 4 years is not in the least surprising. Unless, think about what it takes. It is disconcerting, but if you think about what it takes to turn that sort of organization, it's disappointing, but not really surprising given what they were facing. I would have hoped, and we don't know yet. It's too early. It's possible they've managed to protect more critical systems, and they're losing end user workstations, but not more critical systems. We just don't know enough yet. But it is discouraging to see that so effective, apparently, 4 years later.
Speaking of years later, apparently Microsoft silently fixed a 2-year-old bug in the Windows kernel object manager that allowed the bypass of privileges in Google's Chrome browser. Apparently, James Forshaw, part of Google's zero-day project, reported the issue in December of 2014. Microsoft responded saying that it didn't consider the issue worthy of a fix. However, just recently issued a fix for it. James is quoted on Twitter saying, "Gotta love silent fixes. This corrects a long-standing issue for Chrome Sandbox." Any comment at Microsoft Sec response? Specifically called them out on Twitter. I don't know if they responded.
And I saw something from Zach Faisal on Facebook the other day about, hey, what happens when you report a bug a long time ago and the vendor says that they don't want to fix it, and then they fix it and you find a bug in their fix? Ooh. Huh?
If the
You set your alarm clock and you tell them again.
If they're not working with the security researchers, that is one of the adverse effects of that. In that, if they worked with the security researcher and said, "Hey, we developed a fix for it.
Yep.
We think this is the answer to the problem," and the security researcher that found the bug looks at the fix and goes, "Yeah, no, that doesn't really fix it. Go back to the drawing board." They could very well have had an opportunity to fix this bug correctly.
Yep.
They chose not to, and that is.
Yep, that's
Again,
what it is.
Very disconcerting for me.
Quickly,
It erodes my faith in the security of our infrastructures.
See, that's where we're different, because I never had any to start with.
I had some. I think you've successfully crushed. Between you and Jeff, crushed all of it.
So my story number 4, just quickly, Leslie Carhart, Hacks for Pancakes on Twitter.
Yeah.
She wrote a great post on health and wellness in InfoSec. Not drama or anything, but just like, hey, you need to take care of yourself. Here's some stuff. Here's stuff I do. Here's stuff. And since she works in the DFIR field, when a bunch of us did our stress and burnout work years ago, it was the PCI QSAs were like the people that were melting down. Then the ones that cared got out, and so that got better, but it's the incident response teams that are the DFIR teams that in my ongoing conversations are having problems. So she knows what it's like. She deals, she's at a very big company with very big pressures, and
Yes.
she has the ways she copes and the ways she advises people. It's a great blog post. Recommend reading that, because I know that's come up before. It's been talked about on the show. Just worth a read.
Rule 41.
Oh, God.
Not the same Rule 41 of the internet.
I am sure this will not be abused.
Rule 41 basically boils down to this dispute.
Hack all the things.
I'm going to quote here the rule written by the Judicial Conference of the United States, the policymaking body for the federal court. In April, the Supreme Court approved those changes which would allow federal magistrate judges to issue warrants that let law enforcement remotely search through computers outside of the court's physical jurisdiction and to seize data on those computers if the device's location is concealed, quote, concealed through technological means, or if the computer was part of a botnet used in cyber attacks. EFF has a deep dive into this problem.
So I'm guessing, so if you use Tor, they're allowed to search your shit.
Yep. I don't know. It's so poorly defined, and especially depending on who goes before what magistrate. If you
The
use,
worst laws are
if
poorly
you use-
defined.
If you use
Or the best
HTTPS, if you use HTTPS, you're obfuscating your traffic, right?
Oh, there goes Jimmy. Took his headphones off. Wasn't even watching. Oh, no, he's back.
He's like, screw this Rule 41.
So it's I don't know, but oh God. What were you saying about optimism, Paul?
Speaking of optimism,
Anytime the EFF needs to write a lengthy blog post
Yeah,
about something, it's bad. Like,
Well,
I
you
don't
know
even
what's
need
good?
to read through it to know
Yeah,
that it's bad.
You
And
know
when I
what's
read
good?
through it, I'm like, oh shit, it's bad.
Free subway rides are good.
speaking of optimism,
Beauty eats it.
He eats it.
would you like a gummy bear? They're warm and squishy. And
They're
they've been in
warm.
my pocket.
I like warm and squishy gummy bears.
Who doesn't?
So Larry, you want to? You put the. I thought about it.
Save Ferris, Larry.
Save Ferris.
Say first.
Say Ferris. Oh, so I didn't get it. I've just seen spatterings of this story.
Was that the X hamster data breach?
No, this is ransomware.
There was some spattering with the ex-hamsters, but no.
Ransomware hits San Francisco Municipal Transit,
Yep.
and the Muni got slammed, and so people were tweeting pictures of ransomware screens on the terminals and stuff.
Yeah, basically he's saying you are hacked.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting is they gave everyone a free transit ride for about a day.
Yep.
And they claimed that it wasn't a direct result of the ransomware, but it was just a precautionary measure for them to fix the stuff. But it sounds like there's a lot more to the story than what I covered previously.
And as is always the case in the early things, the first thing said nothing, no data was exposed. They just got to the terminals.
Yeah, but the attackers are complaining that they're willing to dump 30 gigs worth of data if they don't get
Right.
paid $73,000 in Bitcoin.
Right. What is it, 100 Bitcoin? Yeah.
It was $73,000.
$73,000.
yeah.
Whatever that works out to.
Yeah.
But Krebs reported that it was some server-side Java. Jimmy, speaking of, you were talking about, I think it was you or maybe someone else talking about server-side Java. Although you being in application development, familiar with server-side Java, it was some server-side Java
Keep
exploit.
saying server-side Java and watch him twitch over
He
there.
was. Yeah.
Sorry, Jimmy.
Like
I'm glad you stayed on.
a 2-year-old exploit in like JBoss or something was supposedly the
You
core.
keep saying bad words. You keep saying bad words.
Naughty Paul. All I can say is the Muni folks are probably doing this right about now.
Yeah.
This
fire,
is fine.
fire is burning all around them. Just
This
give them
is
This is fine. Yeah.
Well, they said they didn't pay the ransom, but then they also said they succumbed to a phishing attack that then pivoted, that exploited JBoss on server-side Java, which had to run something important, right? This story is like the most FUBAR story recently that I read. Like, there's all kinds of magic and hand waving and magic wands and pixie dust and nothing's wrong. Everyone gets free transit rides. Yay, free transit rides.
Yep. San Francisco Mass Transit Authority, in coordination with partner Cubic Transportation Systems, decided to turn off ticket machines and fare gates on the Muni Metro's subway stations from Friday to Sunday morning.
Oh, so it was longer than
only as a precaution.
Precautionary measure.
Caution my ass.
Candy Mountain. Let's go to Candy Mountain.
Oh shit!
Oh my God.
How's that for an internet meme
Damn.
reference?
Wow, that's
That's probably the last internet meme you ever watched.
Oh my.
Holy cow.
No, it was like the second or third or something like that. That came up on my. The reason it came up on my Facebook feed is like in your memories of like something that I shared like 5 years ago or
my
something
God.
like that. All my friends and family were horrified. They were like calling me up. Are you okay, Paul? Are you okay? I'm like, did you watch the video? It's hilarious.
You mean this one right here?
I don't want to ruin it for everyone in case you have.
Charlie the
on the off chance you haven't seen it.
Charlie the Unicorn goes to Candy Mountain.
No, it's fantastic. My wife's watching like, what's gonna happen? You gotta wait to the end. You gotta. It's not like memes of today that have an instant gratification. Like it was one of the early ones that you had to watch for 2 or 3 minutes.
You had to get into, right?
You had to get into it. You had to stick with it, and then you're rewarded at the end when they. Yeah, I won't ruin it.
Don't ruin it.
On the off chance that you. Anyway, have you heard of drone jacking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it every morning. Wait.
No, drone jacking, Larry.
I'm just gonna, go back to sleep now.
No, Charlie.
Charlie, Candy Mountain. Candy Mountain. Please tell me the production folks and everyone in the viewing area have seen.
Enjoy it.
It's magical.
So anyway,
Drone jacking.
Production crew
jacking.
from my childhood. Oh God.
Good Lord, we're old. We're all old.
So drone jacking, also from their childhood.
I don't know, drone jacking. Is that like
So
a thing?
childhood
It's a thing.
Are people actually making drones fall out of the sky?
Yes. Yeah. So Kevin Finisterre, he works for a company that actually
I miss Kevin. We need to have Kevin back on the show.
Hell yes. Add to list production team.
Like probably since that was a meme, we haven't had Kevin on the show. That's way too long.
Yep. But he works for a company now that does drone security type stuff that instead of doing, basically make drones fall out of the sky, remote overtaking of drones. That's what his company's working on right now.
That's
and
awesome.
it's pretty badass. But yeah, it's drone jacking is a thing.
Is Amazon really is Amazon really delivering packages over drones, or is that just? It was mentioned in this article, which is why they're not really doing that.
I think they're piloting it.
They are.
They are?
I see what you did there.
That's
Wow. Wow. I believe you are correct, piloting, and we have someone we could ask about that in more detail, see if they're willing to talk about that.
So screw the story. Their old age thing. A lot of people this week were whining because Ron Glass, the great actor, passed away this week, and everybody was talking about Ron Glass from Firefly, and I was like, "Oh, you mean from Barney Miller?"
Which one was Ron Glass on Firefly?
One of the kids will have to tell you because he was the detective, the well-dressed and well-spoken detective author in Barney Miller.
And he was in Firefly?
Yeah. He was the shaman or something. I don't know. I remember I watched them, but they didn't stick.
He only watched Barney Miller.
And Firefly was great, but that's after my memory started to turn to shit.
Firefly was a 2-season in a movie sci-fi, which was awesome, which is still to this day.
Barney Miller was high quality TV.
It actually was.
All right. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject, what is everyone? Okay, what is everyone watching now? Of geeky sci-fi, techie.
The Designated Survivor.
I'm watching a bunch of older stuff.
I'm watching really old stuff.
Oh, and Gilmore Girls, because I have lots of daughters.
Oh, Gilmore Girls.
That's wonderful, Jimmy.
That's a better reason than why I would be interested.
All right,
in
I'm watching
Gilmore
The Colony and Outlanders.
Okay, that's good, Larry. Jack, define older stuff.
I just watched The Petrified Forest, which was the first major motion picture for Humphrey Bogart. It was a film noir piece. And I also watched the movie Out of the Past, another early film noir piece that was great. You know, early film noir stuff is what I've been into lately.
He's getting into his infosec noir role.
Paul, how do
Yeah,
you spell
getting
noir?
into that.
Noir. Jimmy, what have you been watching? Are you into like TV and film and that kind of thing?
I have nothing good. Just finished Mr. Robot and watching a terribly sappy sitcom with my wife that I won't name.
Oh,
but,
come
yeah.
on, name it.
Oh,
Name it.
come
We've
on.
probably seen it.
It's called This Is Us. It's
No, that's a good show,
that's a
dude. No,
great
that's
show.
like
it is pretty wholesome. It's
I'm
good.
kind of like a film buff, so like I evaluate things that I watch on TV and movies like based on character development and plot and cinematography and like things like that. So my wife makes me watch stuff like she's like, "This is what we're gonna watch." Sometimes I'm like, that is like in all areas of cinematography, character development, plot, like that is an atrocity. But then she puts on This Is Us. I'm like, no, that's like it's
good.
well written in
it's
good
not bad.
acting. Yeah, it's
So,
good.
so to diverge in a wood a little bit, Tara Wheeler, Deviant's fiance, posted to Facebook the other day, name 3 movies that you love that everyone hates.
What is,
And I came up with 2 really easily, and it was Waterworld and The Postman.
those are
Those are movies that everybody hates that I really like.
I've actually been watching. I kind of went back. I don't know how I stumbled across it. I needed something to watch because I was caught up on a lot of different things, and I was Google searching and like all nerds do, right? And what you're going to watch.
Yeah.
And I came upon Fringe, and I'm like, it ended in like 2011 or something like that. And I'm like, I've never seen the show, and I watched the first couple of episodes, and I was totally sucked. I'm like, this is a really good show. Yeah, some of the acting is kind of eh.
Yep.
Kind of eh. But like the lead blonde chick, like her acting is kind of.
Yeah.
There's one segment of one of the seasons where Leonard Nimoy, who plays the William Bell character, is like talking through her, and she tries to talk Spock, yeah, and she tries to talk like him, and it's just not. It's not. But the writing and everything is good. It's pretty good.
You talk about going back to some of that stuff, but do you remember when we were writing
Dark Angel?
Linksys WRT
Yeah.
54G
I was
hacking.
watching Dark Angel.
Dark Angel.
Yeah.
One of the other ones that we also started watching a little bit was Deadwood.
Yes, you were big into
the
Deadwood.
HBO series, and we never finished it because we canceled Deadwood when we finished the book. Mm-hmm. Because I was writing the book, my wife needed something to do, so she was watching a lot of movies, and we got HBO, and it was an HBO only thing, so we started watching Deadwood, and we canceled Deadwood when the book was finished. We never finished it.
So you went back and finished it.
Last year, we went back and started from the beginning.
Wow.
And finished it because we couldn't remember stuff
Yeah.
that happened in the beginning, and wow, that was fantastic. Go back and look at that. The only problem is that we'd get up in the morning and we'd, because there was such trash mouth on that show, that
Yes.
we'd be saying all the bad words in front of the kids.
And your kids repeat those.
Yeah, fucking cocksucker.
I'm in the car and I'm like, yesterday, and I'm like, the day before, and I'm like, what the? And my 3-year-old says the whole sentence. And I'm like, no. Alias is another one. After I watched Dark Angel, Alias is in that same
Beep, beep.
kind of realm, which Kevin Mitnick makes an appearance in an episode for the.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What's the other one that a lot of our friends are showing up in? Viceland?
Viceland is running a series which I've watched at least 6 episodes, and it's all about hacking.
Yep.
They did one on
Oh,
Stuxnet.
yeah,
They did one
that's
on various things, and
That's
you see.
pretty well done. The other one that they do there, just because of my interest, their the skateboarding dude that's the host is a little annoying, but their the Abandoned series has some interesting things, and it's abandoned places.
There's a newer Snowden movie as well, which is a full Hollywood dramatized version of Snowden. And what
Which
they
I
depict,
will not endorse in any way, shape, or form.
Is it actually called Snowden?
Yeah, I believe
went,
it is.
We went and saw that in the movie theater when we were at.
It starts out
DerbyCon.
when he was in the military. I
Yeah.
didn't know he was in the
Yeah,
military.
the movie got released at DerbyCon.
Okay.
And we went and watched it.
I fell asleep halfway through.
It was
I gotta go back and watch it again, but
It was entertaining.
Yeah, it was
It was entertaining.
The one to watch is the actual documentary.
Citizen 4.
Is that called Citizen 4?
Citizen 4.
With Andy, no, what's his name? The journalist from The Guardian.
Greenberg?
Andy Greenberg.
Yep.
Right? And Lisa.
Lampanelli?
No.
Different.
No. Lisa, the one that filmed the actual documentary. Andy was the journalist. Lisa something, and people are yelling in their cars, and I apologize. There is a documentary filmmaker, Lisa something. She's very, very good. But it is the actual account, like the actual footage of when Snowden was in Hong Kong and releasing all of that stuff, and it ends when he goes
Laura
on.
Poitras.
Thank you, Laura Poitras. Thank you.
Right, okay.
Laura.
Poitras.
Laura
Poitras.
Poitras. There is, what is it called?
Citizen 4.
Citizen 4. That's the one to watch. The Hollywood one is entertaining, like Larry said. If you want to know what really happened, regardless of your opinion, and Jeff, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of people have a lot of opinions on that. I agree with Jeff. But regardless of where you fall, unlike Snowden and what happened, watching Citizen 4 is extremely educational and I think informative to give you some insight as to actually, I mean, they actually had cameras on Snowden after he left the U.S. and went to Hong Kong and was releasing the information to Andy and Laura. And,
and that was very much the portion of some of the dramatization that happened with the Snowden film at the end was they showed all of that.
But what Citizen 4 doesn't tell you that the film, I'm sure, dramatized was I didn't know Snowden's previous history before that.
Right.
That he was in the military and worked for whoever.
Right.
So he was CIA before he was a contractor.
Right. They talked about all of that in Snowden, but it was very much
It was
dramatized.
very brief.
Well, no,
in this one it was maybe brief.
probably
If they give
played
you,
up.
Yeah, it was very played up. It was very dramatized. It was very made for
Yes.
TV, very made for cinema type stuff,
Right.
as opposed to more documentary. So it was intended to take. I would argue, and I haven't seen Citizen 4, and I need to. I have it, but I just haven't had a chance to watch it. It took the documentary and brought it to someone that doesn't watch documentaries.
Yes. Yeah, the documentary is, people like us will get a lot out of the documentary. And the movie is more for regular people that kind of like want to know what happened. But even still, I think everyone should go watch the documentary to understand what happened and form their own opinions, because the documentary is actual footage from when it was happening.
Right, and for me, regardless of what you think about the whole thing, for me, I never really dove into the whole Snowden thing. I know what he did, but I never really cared about what the background was. And seeing Snowden made me get an idea as to about what the background was, even though it was dramatized, and I knew it was dramatized, which makes me want to watch Citizen 4 even more to get the real story, to know what it was about.
Yeah.
Even though it's really a lot of it's water under the bridge at this point. It's been done, but still, it's good to learn from history.
Well, you're making me have to watch it so I can translate for you guys.
Have you not seen Citizen 4, Jeff?
I have not.
I want you to watch that and report back. I'd almost like rather than cover the news on our final episode for this year, I'd almost like to dedicate the news segment to all of the awesome and not so awesome documentary films and TV shows that have covered our field that I think have been more prominent in 2016 than really any other year. I mean, we've been doing this 11 years. I think this was the year where there's so many, and I think there's a lot more ways to watch them now.
And I think that
Amazon, Netflix, and if you had, my friend tells me he has Kodi and is able to watch some of the stuff. But if you watch all of those, what's your opinion? Because I've watched a lot this year. And more so than any other year, they're readily available.
So not the documentary, but Jeff, have you seen about the recently arrested German spy? Since you,
No, I've missed that one.
yeah, you'll want to. I'll ping you offline if you don't find the story thing, because it's
because I'm reading the article title over your shoulder. And
arrested German spy was a one-time gay porn actor and secret Islamist.
Wow.
Wait,
one of these things just doesn't belong here.
Yes.
So if it was gay porn, it's a he. He was, or is it? Is
No,
it a
it
he?
could be.
Well,
No,
not
it could be
necessarily. Don't gender.
Sorry, was it
So,
a he or
in.
she?
It was a he. Was it a German? Was a German intelligence position. Anyway,
Wait, it was a spy for us or a spy for Germany?
It was a worked for German intelligence.
Gotcha.
Had a secret life as
in the U.S.
No, in Germany.
In Germany,
Right, in Berlin.
working.
Had a secret life while he was in Germany as a gay porn actor.
A male gay porn actor.
Porn
Sorry, that's
actor
what I was
years
confused.
ago. Some years ago, converted to Islam, and then tried to
Infiltrate the U.S.?
tried to sell German state secrets into Islamist,
Okay. So it
groups.
had nothing to do with the U.S., really.
but used the same handle in the Islamist chat rooms as he used for his gay porn actor name.
It's actually pretty.
Sounds entertaining.
We've gotten way off topic, but that's a story
but we could
that
almost
you
tie
may.
this into
We can almost tie.
the
It's
stories about
OPSEC,
the
right? It all
Russians.
comes OPSEC. We would
think
like to continue, like towards back to the first segment with talking about the who is stuff, the DNS lookups, the registration stuff. We want our bad guys to continue to have bad OPSEC. That's what we want. We want bad guys with bad OPSEC. That's it.
On that note,
Can we give up now?
we can give up now. Unless Larry, one more story.
Yeah, let's talk about the Russians.
Oh, we should
ahead,
finish.
Jeff.
The Russians.
One more story,
Sure.
then we got to go.
Let's do it. Which one's the Russians?
It's Jeff's stories. Russian.
Jeff put a couple of stories in. Or
Russian.
Well,
The propaganda, Russian propaganda?
I'm working.
Redundant
Let's
redundancy.
not talk over top of each other.
Sorry.
So apparently, the Washington Post put out an article a couple days ago talking about all the Russian propaganda that's somewhat related to, and we didn't have a story about this week, all the fake news that's been pervasive on social media. And then there was a follow-up article, I want to say it was the Wall Street Journal, saying, well, let's not be too quick to judge the Russians. Let's talk about the propaganda, about the Russian propaganda. And then what made me look at these was somebody, I'm on a mailing list with alumni from a certain place I used to work. And somebody asked the question, hey, is there any good way to try to help the newspaper, the media, the Washington Post, figure out when comments that are posted on articles are coming from particular sources and might be part of this whole misinformation thing? And I thought, well, this is an interesting topic for security professionals. Let's bring it up.
I think a lot of stories on social media are either propaganda or largely I'm kind of my faith in social media and the level at which people actually check the facts of stories is greatly diminished. I mean, we've over the past 11 years in this show seen the progression of social media, and we're at a point now where sometimes I feel like that myself and a lot of us in the security community might be the only ones that are actually fact-checking stories that you see on social media.
It is, and Twitter frustrates me, but the value to me and to a lot of people in the security community, Twitter has had an enormous value, but it has become more and more politicized and less conversational over the years. It's been invaded, and Twitter's business model makes it so that it's screaming the loudest is what they care about. But it's still possible to have conversations or connections.
Sure.
It's much harder to have an intelligent conversation on Twitter than it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. Because there used to be regular, intelligent conversations on Twitter. Those days are rare, but Twitter enables them, and then Twitter, as you were talking about earlier, Paul, Twitter DMs now, even though at first I thought letting them go over 140 characters was a problem, that's actually a useful communication method for a lot of us. But there's so much garbage that you just have to filter. And if you personally haven't built up the internal filters, plus use whatever tools you do to filter keywords, it's such a sewer. I mean,
Facebook is even worse of a sewer, especially with the recent political climate and election here in the U.S. It is absolutely astounding how much it has become people just reacting and not fact-checking anything.
What's the most compelling and fascinating is how our president-elect is appearing to be choosing social media as his way for disseminating information to the
it's message
public.
management. He's doing masterful message management via Twitter.
And almost to the detriment to I mean, he's circumventing the press.
Well,
in the old days, we called the media the press.
Right. Well, what he used to do with what he seems to be doing, and I think masterfully, not to get into the politics of it, most of you can figure out where I land on the political spectrum, but he is putting different messages in different channels for different audiences. And it shows a level of political skill that it's interesting to see, given how a lot of people dismissed him. He's managing messages in a way. I'm not sure that that's ideal for the president to send different messages down different channels to.
Well, civics quiz, Paul. What's the First Amendment?
Freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. What Larry said.
Yeah, but who cares about freedom of? Where does freedom of speech apply? Freedom of speech doesn't apply on Twitter because freedom of speech is a government-granted thing, right? Twitter can say you don't meet our terms. Actually, there was somebody floated that.
Yeah, but that's a whole different.
Yeah,
that's a whole different.
You know, our federally guaranteed rights are federally guaranteed. They're not guaranteed
by a private organization.
But my point is the way we got here was Russian propaganda. People not validating.
They believe in.
And I've seen that both in the political spectrum. And I think it was recently
not just that. It's
something, and I haven't validated all the facts, but people criticize Trump for saying something, and then another group of people pull clips from Hillary Clinton saying the exact same thing. Right. But you've seen that in both directions and in varying forms of mismatch of saying, someone said this thing and someone said this other thing, and like who's really validating all of these facts?
Well, it's why I said to bring it back into our world, the Saudi Aramco or the Saudi attacks allegedly by the Iranians. It's why I qualified that heavily with what marketing people call weasel words, and I call being honest because I don't know for sure.
Yep.
The first article that came out was a Bloomberg article. The primary source there was somebody who Space Rogue has shredded in the past. So that's why I say it looks like something we should pay attention to because that would be really bad.
I see this very much the same thing that I see with a family member that, even though has been told not to, invariably forwards me some email chain message thing once a month, which every month I link to articles on Snopes, and then at one point it was an article but that's saying Snopes was crap, which said you need to go read this article at this other site, which the other article at this other site was saying no, Snopes is great.
Right. So that's one of the latest things is there's a concerted attack on Snopes.
Right. So so that's the thing. It was always that I would get it via email and I'd have to reply all because they didn't understand the copy of BCC. I'd reply all and saying, no, here's an article from a reputable source that says this is crap. And now it's shifted delivery method.
Right. All of us here travel a lot or have traveled a lot at various times in our lives, right? Yep. Have any of you ever woken up with your kidneys missing in a bathtub of ice while traveling?
No.
Hold on, let me think. No.
Just okay.
Well, tonight's still not out of the woods yet.
The night is young.
Yes. No, I have not. Ever. I've been in some really sketchy situations, but I've always woken up with my kidneys.
Yeah. If I don't get home soon, I might wake up without my kidneys.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for appearing on the show. Larry, Jack, and Jeff. Jimmy, thank you very much for your technical segment.
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks to Alex and John from Threat Connect. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching to Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and out.